Hello friends, today I'm going to show you how to program a saw wave or a square wave on your Yamaha DX7. I'm going to assume you know a little bit about FM synthesis already, but I'll still try to outline the basics as I go through them, alright? So, we've turned on your machine, and we're at whatever screen, it doesn't really matter. Basically what we need to do is find a voice or a preset, that's one of those 32 keys that we don't like, and we want to overwrite. So first thing we have to do is select our memory. I'm going to choose internal because I don't have one of these little cartridges from over here. Right? So I'm on my internal memory, and I'm going to choose a sound that I don't like. I'm going to go through and play them. Click the button, see, click 2, it brings me up number 2. Personally, I'm not a fan of number 3, which is the trumpet. So I'm going to overwrite that. May as well pause the video, find a sound that you don't like out of all of your default sounds that your synth has, as we're going to overwrite it, alright? So, once you've found your sound, we are going to reset the sound to blank. We're going to do what's called an init patch, or init all the voices, initialize is what it stands for, so that we start with a blank, empty patch with nothing on it to screw up our sound, alright? So we're going to hit the function key, and we are going to do the voice init, which mine already says, because I seem to use that function more often than any other one. But if yours does not say that, you want to go over here and find the voice init key. Click that until this says voice init. So I'm just clicking number 10 over and over again, and it's cycling through the options. So I want voice init. I'm going to go over here, click yes. It'll say, are you sure? I will click yes again. And now we have, we're back in edit mode now, and we have a default blank preset that only has one operator outputting anything. If you don't know what an operator is, it's essentially an oscillator on a normal synth, though it has more functions. I'll get to that in a second. So basically only one operator is on, and it is the first one, and it is outputting the only waveform that this thing actually knows how to output, a sine wave. So, we're all at this blank preset that is just a sine wave. Now, we want to create a saw wave. So what we need to do is switch to an algorithm that will allow us to achieve this. The algorithms, if you don't know, are all of these things up here. They basically outline how the operators are going to function. And you, as you know, or should know, there are 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up on the top row there. And they are all sine waves. And what they do is they either, in the case of algorithm 1, operator 1 and 3 will output volume, so they will actually output sound. And then operator 2 will modulate operator 1. So what is operator 1 called since it's actually outputting sound? Well, it's called a carrier. What is operator 2 called since it is messing around with operator 1? It's called a modulator. So operator 2 is modulating operator 1, and then operator 6 is modulating operator 5, which is modulating operator 4, which is modulating operator 3, which is the carrier, and the carrier is outputting signal to your speakers. That's a lot, right? Well, we don't need all of those operators for our saw wave and square wave that I'm going to make. What we need is something like algorithm 2 there. What it has that we specifically want is one carrier with one modulator on top of it. And if you see this modulator, it has a little loop going around it, meaning that it is feedbacking its own output into itself. So it's like a little loop, and that's why it loops around the operator. So we want to use algorithm 2. How do I change the algorithm? Well, we're in edit mode. If we're not, click the edit compare button, and it should put you into a screen just like this, with maybe different words at the bottom. It could be frequency course, it could be algorithm, which is what we want. Who knows? What matters is that you have the algorithm button, or the algorithm, what number algorithm, all the ones, operator 2, etc. So we want to change our algorithm. We're in the edit mode. We click the algorithm key, number 7. Go back here, we can see it says algorithm select now instead of output level. We want algorithm 2 because it has the feedback loop. We just +1 or use the data entry slider, but we're only going up 1, so what's the point? Run algorithm 2 now. Easy. What sound do we get? A sine wave. So, how do we change this? Well, before we do that, we want to make sure that we're only using operators. Sorry, this thing does have a hard time focusing sometimes. We only want to use operators 1 and 2. So, we want to use the operator on-off buttons to turn off everything except for operators 1 and 2. So if you see here, all those 1s up at the top there, those are the operators. A 1 means it's on, a 0 means it's off. If I click number 3 over here, the third 1 turns to a 0. 4, 5, and 6. Apparently I'm not clicking it. There we go. So that means that only operators 1 and 2, from left to right, are on. And the sound we get is still a sine wave. And why is that? Well, that's because the output level, aka the volume, of our operators are only set to 99 for operator 1, which is the carrier, and it's set to 0 for operator 2, which is the modulator, meaning operator 2 isn't modulating operator 1 at all. So how do we do that? We select the output level, which is number 27. When you get to the output level, you'll see in the top right a number. It could be operator 1, it could be operator 2, who knows? But that's the thing you're looking for. If you see, we're on op2, standing for operator 2, and its output level is 0, like I said. If I click the operator select button, that will change which operator we are editing. So I click operator select, gives me operator 1, operator 2, operator 1, operator 2, operator 1, operator 2, etc. If I turned on the other operators, it would allow me to control them by clicking the operator select. So as we can see, operator 1 is 99, that's our sine wave. Now we want to take operator 2 and modulate operator 1. So nothing's happening yet. What do? We've pressed the output level key like I said. That means we're adjusting the volume or amount that operator 2 is modulating operator 1. And we're going to turn that up. I'm going to turn it up to about 7, let's put it at 80, just so you can see what it sounds like. And there you go. You've got a different sound. And all over, makes all sorts of different sounds. Some pretty crazy harsh sounds. And there you go. You've got your first sound that's not a sine wave. Now, how do we make a saw wave or a square wave? Because those are usually pretty fairly useful sounds in terms of current music at the very least. So to make a saw wave, we are going to put the output level of operator 2 up to about, I think 81 is usually good. 81, 82, 80, those all work. So now we still have a pretty hollow sound. It sounds like a muted saw, like it's got a filter on it. So we want to make that shine. So the reason we chose algorithm 2 was because operator 2 has the feedback loop. And if we go here and click feedback, which now it tells the amount of feedback, and we turn this guy all the way up, meaning we want to loop as much possible the output of operator 2 back into itself, we will now get this sound. Ta-da, you got a sine wave. Congratulations. You don't need your analog synthesizers anymore. No, I'm just kidding. If you listen to it again, it's fairly thin and a little more digital, I guess, since it is digital, than a regular analog synthesizer. So, we have our saw wave. How about that? It doesn't sound half bad. How do we get our square wave? Well, that's pretty easy. We need to go to our frequency course. So why do we need to change the frequency of anything? What is the frequency? Frequency is basically what note is playing in its simplest terms. Basically, on this thing, if I click the frequency course, it's at 1. That means that middle C is middle C, middle A is middle A, etc., etc. If I switch my operator to 1, if I switch the frequency course up by 1 by pressing the plus button, we are now getting a little bit of a higher sound. And higher still. So that's basically just changing the octave of your oscillators. So why do we need to do this? And why is this so important? Well, basically, the frequency at which your modulators and carriers are affects the kind of weird, crazy sounds you can get because of the harmonics that they increase or induce and whatnot. So if I switch to operator 2, operator select, and turn its frequency to one octave higher than operator 1, that means we're adding essentially odd numbered harmonics to the sound, which if you Google it is basically how a square wave is created. So if I click and I see, there you go, you've got a square wave too. If I turn the frequency back down, you got your saw wave. So let's go do a quick review of what settings we've changed. We've turned operator 1 and 2 on by clicking these guys. We've switched the output level of operator 1, we left at 99. Operator 2, we put around 81. 80 works, 82 works, 83 works. The higher you get, it starts to create some weird noise. It doesn't sound as good. So 81 through 82, whatever, that works. Next, we got our output levels set. We needed our feedback, right? We needed this algorithm that has the feedback going in. 19 would work, 20 would work, 21 would work. Essentially anything that has a feedback loop going into one modulator that's directly affecting the bottom level carrier. So we need our feedback, like I said. Number 8 is our feedback. We turned it all the way up. Next, we needed to mess with our frequency to get our square wave. At this point, we had our saw wave. We click the frequency. We turn operator 2's frequency, which is the modulator, up 1 octave. You get a square. Turn it up another one. It's more of a pulse. Turn it up again. Even tighter. It's got kind of like a little bit of a ring. And if you go even higher, it starts to get crazy. And it basically gets irritating. But those sounds can be useful to create things like bells and whistles and whatnot. So, there we have our square and saw wave. It's pretty simple. What should be the next step? Well, a saw wave by itself is cool. It sounds nice, but I would say we might want to make it sound a little like a pluck, let's say. Like we'd be playing in a trance arpeggio or something like that, right? So basically, I'm going to quickly show you my micro boot up here. Turn it on. Stand up here for a second. And show you a thing or two that you would see on most synthesizers, or analog synths, whatever you want to call them. Subtractive synths, I guess would be the best term. Alright, so I've got this guy on. I've got my mod wheel on. Let's turn that down. Let's turn the square wave down. Alright, so this one's pretty easy to program, right? I'm turning up my saw wave. I've got my saw sound. How would you make a pluck sound on a subtractive synthesis? Well, you would turn down the decay on your envelope, turn down your cutoff frequency, turn up the envelope amount a little bit, and give it maybe a bit more of a decay, turn up the envelope. There you go, you got a bit of a pluck. Let's make a quick sequence. Oh, well, that's not a good sequence. Okay, if I play that back. I forgot I changed the settings for my micro boot. Well, basically, you know what a freaking sequence sounds like. I would just go doodly-doodly-doodly, blah blah blah, right? So there we go. We have our plucky sound. We had some release. Yada yada. We get some different sounds. So, how do you do that with the DX7? How do you make a pluck? Well, that's a good question, sir. The truth is, if you look at all these keys, you won't see anything that has to do with a filter. What the hell do you do? Well, that's where just a regular volume envelope comes into play. So, when I go back up to my micro boot for one more second, if you see here, I'm going to turn off the cutoff, just set that all back to default. if I have my envelope, this envelope set to affect the volume, right? The volume goes down over time, right? If I turn this up a little bit, turn off the release, it fades out. The cutoff isn't fading out, but the sound fades out, because that's normally what an envelope does when it's affecting the VCA, voltage control amplifier, whatever, when the envelope controls the volume, essentially. Now, that's what these EGs, envelopes, do. They control the volume, not the filter, because there is no filter. So how do we get a filter type sound out of it? Well, operator 2 isn't actually outputting any sound, right? It's just affecting operator 1 at a certain amount. So if we use the envelope to decrease the amount that operator 2 is modulating operator 1 by, we can go from a sharper sound to a more dull sound. So if we listen right now, we have a pretty sharp saw wave. If we want to make it a more of a plucky sound, we're going to modify our envelope. So if I click the rate key, we bring this over to rate 3, which is, if we look at this guy over here, rate 3 is essentially the second decay, but it's the last decay. And if we're only making a one-stage sound, which we are, just a quick pluck, we want to use rate 3 and level 3. So all of these guys will be set to 100, except for level 4. Don't touch level 4 yet. That's a scary function. So basically all of these guys are going to be set to max 99, and then we're going to mess about with rate 3 and level 3. So we've selected rate 3 by clicking the EG rate key until it showed that. I'll keep clicking it. You can see it just cycles through 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Alright, 1 is attack, 2 is technically decay number 1, 3 is decay number 2, 4 is release. We get to 3. We want to make it a plucky sound. So if you saw my envelope up here, I had my attack here, decay all the way down, sustain, or decay up in the middle somewhere, sustain down, release down. Attack down means that there's no attack, which for some reason on this guy, a rate of 99 means really, really fast. It's kind of the opposite of what you'd see up there, but that's fine. So we want the decay to be all the way down and the sustain to be all the way down, right? But the problem is we can't control this knob to say where the sound ends, where the filter stops closing at, right? So if you listen, oops, I got the envelope on. Right, it stops there, turn it up. We can't really control that. We have to use the sustain instead to control where it stops at. So if I turn this cutoff all the way down and turn the envelope up, you can see that even though my cutoff is all the way down, the sustain keeps it at a reasonable cutoff level, right? So we want to use that same technique and apply it down here. We want the operator, number 2, why is my things... Alright, we want the operator 2 to still have some volume, right? We want it to still modulate operator 1 a little bit. So we're going to turn the rate 3 down, because that's just the speed, right? The rate is the speed. So we'll turn it down to like 50, alright? Nothing's happening because we need to change the level. So if we change the level to EG level 3, turn this down to like, say 75, so it's only going down in volume about a quarter of the way. We've got a pluck. Congratulations. You just mess about with the rate of operator 2, and we can make all sorts of different crazy sounds. Let's make it really quick. That's probably around 72. That's way too quick. Try like 63. Still too quick. There you go. You got a cool little pluck type sound. And if you add some effects to it, that's the sound you'd expect to get out of something like this. Let's turn that. No, it's a little bit different, but Oops, sorry. It's a little different. It's not quite the exact sharpness of this thing, right? This thing's also a lot louder. But you can see here you now have a pluck sound. And we did that by just turning down the volume of operator 2 over time, not operator 1. Because turning down operator 1 would turn down the volume. Turning down operator 2 just turns down the amount of modulation, which in this scenario decreases the amount of high frequencies getting through or being output from operator 1. And like I said, if we just switch our frequency on operator 2, the modulator, up to 2, we get our square wave. And voila, we have our little square pluck. And we can screw around with the rate some more, and the levels. So we can turn rate 1 down to like 40, and we'll get an attack. Like a filter opening and closing. If we do it quick enough, it'll start to sound kind of like a... Maybe that's a touch too fast. And we'll switch back to the saw wave. Sorry, I'm going a little quick here, but... we can start to get kind of a horn-like sound. How do we make it sound a little less sharp? So if you hear, when I click it, it gets a little too high for a horn. So we would just turn the output level down, right? The maximum output level of operator 2 down a few notches. And there you go. It sounds not quite as bright. So hopefully this so far has been pretty helpful in at least getting you started with some sounds that you can make right off the bat, and to show you that you don't necessarily need an analog synth. You can still get pretty much any sound out of this that you can that. I mean, not quite, and it's probably going to sound better on an analog synth, but if you can only afford one piece of hardware, it doesn't really matter what you choose, because everything can pretty much do something close to what everything else does. And the main cool thing about FM synthesis in particular is the amount of ridiculous sounds that you can get because of all these algorithms and all the ways you can modulate all 6 operators. It's the types of waveforms you can get are way more than just the 3 or 4 you get in a normal subtractive synth. So we've got our sound. You probably want to save this, I guess, just so you can see the numbers and come back to it later. So how the heck do we save this? Well, first of all, we probably want to give it a name, right? So if I make sure I'm still in the edit mode, which you can tell by the output level. Oh, by the way, you saw that flashing? That's going to compare it to what it used to sound like. You can hear it used to sound like a sine wave, and now that's what it sounds like. That's what we came up with, right? Alright, so how do we save it? We're in edit mode. You can see it's telling us to edit the output level. We want to change the name. We're going to click voice name all the way at the end here. You can see it's got a little thing. So this part requires 2 hands. You're going to hold down the character / edit key. It says character on it, right? You hold that down and you start punching in your letters. So I'm just going to call it W or something, right? So that I can use this with one hand. So I just put it at W. Remember, hold down the whole time, right? Keep holding down the character key. If I'm going to enter spaces, right? See, I'm holding down character, clicking space. There we go. My name for my thing is going to be W. And how do I save W? Well, we want to first turn off memory protection. You see up here, the top one. Please make sure you hit that one instead, right? You click that guy. Mine is off, but what you would do is you just click this guy because it says off. And I think it might say, are you sure? I'm not sure. Regardless, you just make sure it says memory protect internal off at the end of it, right? Now that we are in this state, your memory is not safe. Any of your current patches can be overwritten if you hit the right selection of buttons. So we want to overwrite function 3, right? We chose function 3, or preset 3 in the beginning, all the way 25 minutes ago. When we started, we said, I don't like preset 3, I'm going to overwrite it. So how do I overwrite it? Well, you're going to click the store key. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. That's EG copy. Sorry. Scratch that. So we want to save this guy. We still want to save number 3. After we've unprotected the memory, you select your memory internal still, right? Do not click any of these buttons. You will lose your data if you click any of these buttons at this point of time. Because right now, we are in memory select mode, and we are choosing our voice. Press those guys, you lose all your work. This is why this thing gets kind of scary. You have to make sure you hit the right combination of keys to save your work, right? We selected memory internal. We are in internal voice. It says we're on internal 3. What we want to do is save this sound that we've made to internal 3. If we just click internal 3, don't do it. If you click it, it will load what's in preset 3. It will get back your old sound. I did this too many times. So what you want to do is hold down the store key and hit 3 at the same time. So like I said, click store, hold it down as hard as you can, and click number 3. Sorry, it's going all the way in. If you see here, I clicked 3 while holding store. You still have my sound. We're still in memory select mode, so if I hit 4, it'll go to male choir. And if I click 3, it'll go back to the sound we just created. Voila! You've made your first sound, and you can add all sorts of effects to it. And there you go. You got something to start out with. I don't know what I might do for my next video, but I mean, this is 27 minutes. This is pretty good to hold you off for now, right? Maybe leave some comments to see if, there's some stuff you want to learn about this, because I'm still learning too myself. I'm pretty new. There might be a better way to make a saw wave or a square wave. I don't know. This is how I found the best sounding saw wave and square wave so far. But like I said, I'm still learning. So if there's anything you want to learn about, like what things do, I mean, you could learn yourself, but if you'd rather see it in video form, let me know and I'll investigate. I know what the mod sensitivity does. We haven't used any LFOs, but we can use that to make some wobbly basses. Like, you can create some crazy dubstep basses using the LFO, and you're modifying your operators with the LFO and whatnot. And there's some weird functions like keyboard level scaling, keyboard rate scaling, which involves this guy up here. I haven't really looked into that yet. That might be something I could do. But regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it helped you at least get a starting point where you can start with either a sine wave, a saw wave, or a square wave, and then add other sounds around it from there. We only used 2 operators in that, right? We used 1 and 2. If you start adding 3, 4, 5, and 6, you can get some weird sounds. And you could use any of these other algorithms. Like you could use number 5, right? Because it's got 5, which would replace our operator 1, and 6. I'm sorry, this guy. 6, which would replace operator 2. And then you've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 to do other stuff with. You could detune 1 and 3 a few notes. You could do all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, I can quickly do that very fast before I get to the half an hour mark. So, back into edit mode. I'm going to switch to algorithm. Actually, we want something that we can do very quickly. Operator 9, because operator 9 still has 1 and 2 in the same fashion that number 2 does, right? So I'm going to switch to algorithm 9, click the algorithm key, switch to algorithm 9. Alright. Still have the same sound. For some reason all the operators are on, but that doesn't matter. So if we look at operator 9, operator 3 outputs sound. So let's go to the output level, choose operator 3, the operator select key, turn it up. Get some more sound. I'm going to turn off the effects. Turn it back down. It just basically fills out the sound with another sine wave. And we can do crazy stuff like change its frequency ratio, and we can put it like a... Is it a perfect fifth above? If I put it up to 1.5, I know I'm clicking way too many times. We get some weird sounds. Turn on operator 4. Put that up so it modulates operator 3. Turn down the frequency on operator 4 maybe. Maybe turn it up. Alright, since the other guy's at 1.5, I can turn this guy up to 2.5. Or I mean, it's not a great sound, right? But at least you're starting to add more operators in. You can start making all sorts of weird, crazy sounds. Mess around with the rates of the envelopes, make some crazy pads and whatnot, right? Like I've got... It's not quite a saw, but it's got a pretty cool little slow wobble on it. You got 17, it's a weird bell pad. That one I didn't touch. What else did I touch? I changed 22. Right. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do with this thing, alright? So just go out there and have fun. Peace.